LTX Studio. It looks like a very powerful tool. So obviously, as you said, you can touch different aspects of the filmmaking production. But I want to touch or talk about the elephant in the room.
You're watching CineD, supported by B&H and CVP.
Hi, I'm Johnny from CineD, and I'm here with Zeev Farbman. Zeev, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you very much. And you are a co-founder of Lightricks. Before we start to dive into LTX Studio, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my background is in computer science. Before co-founding Lightricks, I was doing my PhD, and most of my research was somewhere on the border between computer graphics and image processing. During my PhD, I collaborated with various research departments kind of across the world, including in the industry. I spent some time in both Microsoft research and Adobe research, so that's how I was exposed a little bit about what's going on in the industry. Attended a lot of SIGGRAPH conferences, right, and published some papers there. And my dream was always was to be a tenured professor in academia. But during my PhD, I met a bunch of very ambitious folks that were doing their PhD with me that over time became co-founders of Lightricks. That kind of pushed me to take our ideas from the walled garden of academia to the wider community, and that's what we did at Lightricks. We were inspired by what Adobe are doing for professionals. So initially we were creating mobile apps for wider consumer audience. And with the advent of generative AI, we decided that it's time to go forward and start creating tools for professional audience as well.
What products did you actually work on together?
Funnily enough, when we thought about Lightricks, it was more like the seeding that mobile is coming to the world. It's a new computing platform, and back in the day, we didn't have yet like this content creation tools on mobile. And we thought, well, it's an opportunity to create kind of new things. Initially, we even thought to do it inside the academia. That it didn't work out. So we didn't think about a specific product. We thought more about what kind of cool creative experiences and workflows kind of make sense on mobile. And after we kind of co-founded Lightricks, we tried a bunch of ideas while we learned mobile technologies. And at some point, we realized that we can take Photoshop level retouching capabilities and bring them to mobile. So that was our first product that was called Facetune. It is still our biggest brand. It actually become a very big brand, and people these days use Facetune as a verb. But it kind of started there, and over time we created more and more apps to try to take a creative use case that can make sense on mobile. So by now we have a kind of big portfolio of products, main ones being Facetune, PhotoLip, and VideoLip. And as I mentioned, with the advent of Gen AI, we're starting to move to new markets.
When did you actually recognize that generative AI is the best next thing?
I have to tell you that for a long time I was skeptical about the maturity of Gen AI system. We had people in the research team at Lightricks working on the system for a while now, and even by the late 2021, the best we could get, like imagine it was like this time of DALL-E 1, right? More or less that where Gen AI was back then. The best the system could create, like we were laughing, was like these avocado chairs. That's how they presented in the paper. So again, it was cool, but we didn't have like the sense. I didn't have the sense that in half a year, the scaling of data in the compute will get us to a point where we're finally going to reach the level of quality that's kind of going to change everything. So for me, the change in thinking definitely came in the summer 2022 when more or less at around the same time, we saw the release of DALL-E 2 and then Stability 1.4, 1.5. Midjourney got to a level of quality that I think it's became clear that we're witnessing a new rendering paradigm kind of emerging, and we realize, okay, like it's going to change everything. And it's about time to start being serious about it.
So I would like to concentrate on your latest tool, which is the LTX Studio. You just announce that it's an open beta. That means that people can freely join the program or test it or see what it's like. This is a generative AI tool. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is exactly? Because obviously some people don't really know what it is.
So at the moment, we're trying to focus with LTX Studio on visual prototyping needs. Okay, so imagine if you are working on development, or if you're working in advertising agency and you're like pitching a lot of ideas to the clients. At the moment, we're aiming to like these initial stages of development where you want to kind of bounce ideas very quickly. You want to visualize them. You want to show it to teammates, to clients, and you want to do it as fast as possible. And I think like over time, obviously, as the quality of the results is going to become higher and higher, we will able to move further into production pipeline. But at the moment, we're talking about visual prototyping.
You're dealing with different models, and that's completing the LTX Studio. Can you just let me know what those models are?
Yes, perhaps I should have kind of explained it better what I mean by visual prototyping. So the idea at LTX Studio is that you can start with a really high-level idea, right? And for example, you want to tell a story about kid that's being raised in Yakutia and immigrates to another country. Okay, you can start by like just like typing a prompt, and then the system is going to kind of guide you over the process of creation a story, casting the characters, creating scene and shots, right? So you're going kind of inside LTX Studio, all the stages from ideation to creating kind of shots, and it kind of ties everything together, right? So in a sense, we're trying to create like this one-stop shop that goes all the stages of the way. And of course, if you're someone who already has, for example, you have a script, right? So you don't need to start with something that the AI gives you. You can start obviously with your own script, etc. But the idea should be this like one-stop shop where you can go from ideation to the final product. In terms of different AI models, like frankly, there's like a ton of them inside LTX Studio because there are like a ton of different needs, right? So when you're working on the ideation, you obviously need to work with LLMs. Once you're going to the kind of creation of the visuals, you're moving to the latent diffusion models. Once you're starting going from the kind of static images to videos, you're starting to work with video models. There is also a component of creating audio effects and music, etc. So there are like a ton of different models there. Some of them kind of proprietary models that we're working here internally. Some of them are licensed models because, again, as a company, we don't have like a ton of expertise around music creation. So we kind of license some of the stuff. So at the moment, it's a combination of kind of open models, proprietary models that we licensed, and the models that we're developing here internally at Lightricks.
Who is this tool for?
At the moment, we're targeting people that need to develop their ideas and to show it to teammates or clients, right? So if we're thinking about like advertising agents, we're talking to people who are pitching ideas to clients, right? If we're talking about like developments or filmmakers, people who are developers, ideas for, like films, TV studios, etc. Kind of same story. It's like people who want to pitch their ideas. And typically it should be in the very kind of early stages of production. During beta, we saw things that kind of surprised us, right? So that some people, for example, doing it in post-production actually stages for kind of figuring out kind of what's missing, right? Like if let's say you have like some kind of animation that's missing, that it can be used for it as well. But again, at the moment, we're talking about top of the funnel, people who want to pitch ideas quickly to clients or teammates.
It looks like a very powerful tool. So obviously, as you said, you can touch different aspects of the filmmaking production. But I want to touch or talk about the elephant in the room. And this is the fear of people losing their job because of such tools. You are a technological company, but you do have a lot of creative background. You are producing stuff. Let's have this type of scenario when people from your team, do you think that they should fear losing their job because of such tool?
So it's like, in my opinion, human race has some kind of infinite appetite for content, okay? And I think what happens over time is that although we are becoming maybe like more and more productive in terms of content we create, we constantly need more of it, right? And the example that I just like recently discussed with someone is the production of AAA games. Like think about, for example, about like maybe like Rockstar Games and GTA series, right? So around like GTA 3, they switched it like to 3D world, and then the world became bigger and bigger. So what happens at the moment is that the time that it takes between like two games in the series, between GTA 5 and the next one, is already like a decade, right? We're talking about a crazy amount of people that creating assets for these virtual worlds. And a lot of these people are actually doing pretty mundane jobs. I have like this example that my brother that kind of had a gaming studio back in the day, he interviewed a person who was working for Blizzard. So he was very excited because obviously Blizzard is a big name in the gaming industry. And after like interviewing the person, he realized that he spent, like 3 years in Blizzard, more or less painting like grass textures. Okay. And listen, like in my opinion, there is no creative person that goes to design school and acquires all these creative skills in order to constantly paint grass. It's just like very hard for me to see it. So I think that's gonna happen is that these tools are gonna definitely augment our creativity. It's hard for me to see how in the future you'll need kind of to sit and paint grass unless you are, I don't know, trying to create some kind of weird art form around grass. And this boost in productivity will shift the costs associated with production, right? I kind of expect that way smaller studios will be able to create worlds on the scale of GTA 5. And what people with big budgets will create is obviously something that's gonna completely kind of astonish us. So in terms of like fears of losing jobs, I do believe that a lot of the current tooling will be different, right? So if you're like a designer that works in a certain pipeline, doesn't matter, like, I don't know, like Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, or in 3D, like Blender, whatever, that's like your stack, you will need to adapt. Like there is no question about it because AI will help you to automate a ton of things. And my best advice would be not to be resistant to that. I would just like really constantly look how AI can augment our productivity and make us more creative to work on less mundane stuff. But I don't see how the appetite of human race for amazing content will go down. And from talking with people who are creating content, like I think you also kind of worked with Ari Folman, right? Back in the day, maybe. But anyhow, like I spoke with him about production of Watson Bashir and just like to take kind of high-end animation projects and to figure out where the budget actually goes for, right? So from his perspective, the real creative job, like real creative work of kind of his key animators that are working on kind of keyframes is less than 10% of the budget. It's like something very small, right? And most of the budget actually goes to keyframing. That you're right that at the moment is keyframing is also done by, like this big kind of art kind of shops and a lot of junior designers are working in that. So some of these things are going to be obsolete, right? But I think it might be a good thing because it will perhaps give an opportunity for even junior people to work on a more creative task. So again, I think the tooling in the industry is definitely going to change. I think it's kind of clear by now. It's very hard for me to see how the amount, like overall amount of people working on creative things, on storytelling is going to go down because our appetite for the stuff as humans is just huge.
Please don't consider me rude in any way, and I'm not going to put everything on your shoulders here. The thing is that what you're representing or what you are offering is such a comprehensive tool that it's almost touching every stage of the production. You have the storytelling, you have the visualization, you have the music, the narration, voiceover, and so on. And we as CineD, we are trying to bring to the people the knowledge about those tools. And we're also trying in some ways to dismantle the fears. Because obviously, if you're a wedding filmmaker or if you are doing documentaries, I guess you will not lose your job tomorrow because you still engage with real people. But on the other hand, if you're doing commercials, for example, and your client will find that there is a way to produce a short 30 seconds commercial without involving almost anybody from the known workflow. He wouldn't need maybe a creator, a filmmaker, editor, and so on. He can literally write how he sees the outcome and feed your software with it and come up with a product. That's what we are trying to bridge here, to understand from people like you who are actually creating those tools, if you're also considering the other side, or actually it's all about technology and the future.
So again, like I think you're right that there are going to be a lot of the use cases that are going to become commodity with this kind of tech, right? Meaning that in the past you need to rely on the professionals in order to create these things, and now they're going to be streamlined by AI systems. I think that what's going to happen is that people are going to go further up the funnel, meaning toward things that are kind of more creative and more complex. Because imagine that the level of quality is raising, but then this new level of quality becoming commodity. Everyone expects it, right? So then you need kind of creative professionals in order to figure out what differentiation is going to be. Like think about initially about advertisement on the web, right? We just had like these simple banners that these days are obviously created by, crazy amount of software, even like before Gen AI, right? Like you could go to Canva, for example, like a design tool that's like really easy to use and could create a lot of these banners. But if we're looking at the overall amount of people that were working on even like web advertisement in the 90s, when we had like these banners back in the day, and the amount of people are working it now, the amount of people is way higher, right? Because like the whole thing is evolving and the quality bar is going high. So I definitely agree that a lot of ads that at the moment are considered professional are going to become a kind of lower bar of quality. But the companies will try to differentiate themselves and try to figure out how they can stand out. And in order to figure out that, they'll need creative people. So again, like I completely agree with you that there are going to be kind of shifting dynamics where these people are investing their effort. But overall, as an industry, I don't see how it's shrinking and like why. I don't see this dynamic at the moment. There are like certain things. I'll give you an example, right? Let's take something very specific, like a copywriters, okay, or around like large language models. Yes, they're doing like a lot of tasks that's going to be make some of these kind of skills obsolete, right? But then again, I think the talent of these people will kind of shift elsewhere. That at least at the moment, my kind of understanding of these dynamics is very, again, hard for me to see how people are gonna want less kind of creative things, how the appetite is gonna down. I think again, the quality is gonna raise, and then everyone will try to figure out what are you doing above this quality bar.
How do you train your AI models? This is something that many are very concerned about, privacy and how do you do this? Well, where do you take the material from?
Yeah. So at the moment, we're like, let's kind of start with kind of what everyone is doing and then focus on what we're trying to do kind of about that. So at the moment, obviously, everyone is kind of using publicly available data, which means scraping the internet. That's like a kind of a standard across AI companies. And it's very important to realize that I know it's like very a sensitive topic to a lot of people. If we're looking from this from legal perspective, and obviously it very depends on jurisdiction, where you are, etc. At least in the United States, is at the moment it's not clear there is an issue with doing that. Okay, if we're looking at the kind of litigations that were already decided in the courtrooms, like something like LinkedIn around against like the company trying to scrape them, it was considered okay by the court, specifically around diffusion models. At the moment, there are a bunch of standing litigations, and the legal answer in the US perhaps is not clear at the moment, and we'll see how it evolves. Around our jurisdiction, you mentioned that you are in Japan now at the moment. I think there is a kind of a blank statement there by the government of Japan that are actually took a very kind of a permissive stance toward training of the AI system, right? So that's at the moment, again, like what's, I would say, the kind of benchmark in the industry. Because of the concerns around like the data and some of the kind of lack of clarity, there are attempts to make the training process kind of more kosher, right? So there are already companies that did agreements with stock assets providers and training on the data that kind of clearly can do that. So for training kind of our video model, that's what we are trying to do. We're like striking agreements with public broadcasters, right? That have like a big kind of a volume of video footage that we can train our video model on. And yeah, that's like what we're trying to do.
So you're working with broadcasters around the world in order to access their library?
Yeah.
So what you say, that you are not using any publicly available footage in the internet out there, but you're really trying to be more specific and work with broadcasters.
No, like we are using publicly available data, that's kind of for sure. But because some of our customers are like are kind of big brands, we also kind of try to figure out how we can create like a corpus of data that's kind of completely kind of clean, right? And for that, we're kind of starting to build it. It takes time because typically like one broadcaster doesn't have the amount of data that we need to train the systems, right? So we started with some Israeli broadcasters. Now we're talking with kind of other countries as well. And over time, like the idea is you're gonna build kind of enough in order to train the models. Another option, and again, it's just like a kind of a matter of basically money by now, that you can license a lot from stock assets providers, right? It kind of should be enough. So that's an option also on the table that we're discussing with stock assets providers.
I would also like to know your opinion about authentication of material or clips of videos, movies, whatever, that made with AI. Do you think that those needs to be somehow, in a very clear way, being stamped invisible or visible, doesn't matter, that people will know that what they are watching was made with AI?
So it's like, let's think about this idea from kind of multiple directions. Like, I think from the perspective of the companies engaged in the space, it's something that's fairly easy to do, and I think they're gonna cooperate if regulation around will emerge. My concerns is actually doesn't solve the problem that it intends to solve, right? Because if we're talking about kind of some kind of basic watermarking where you're adding something on top of the frame, some kind of watermark, etc., it's obviously very easy to remove it. If we're talking about things that are more subtle, that you are subtly manipulating the kind of statistics of the images or videos that you're creating, then it's a little bit more robust, but actually not robust enough. You know, okay, it's like in the world of AI, we already for a long time have like this concept of training AI in adversarial way, meaning that while you're creating a generative system, you're also training a discriminative system that tries to say basically if what generative system is creating is AI or not. And in a sense, if someone like creates like a very strong system, discriminative system that can tells you if something is AI, you can use it during AI training process in order to overcome that and make your AI kind of closer to natural images. So from technological standpoint, I don't think at the moment that there is an actually kind of ironclad solution for that. And that I think can be even more of a problem, that imagine that someone comes with the system that people consider that it can determine well if it's AI or not, but actually a lot of kind of players in the industry, definitely on the government level and big companies, can cheat this benchmark, then there's like a big problem. So technologically, I'm not aware of an ironclad solution at the moment. So, and another problem is that we are getting to a point where a lot of the AI systems can run locally. At the moment, when we're kind of discussing regulations around the AI, people are kind of mostly focused around a kind of commercial companies in the space, right? But we are going to a point where the same level of functionality, for example, that you're getting from ChatGPT, very soon you will be able to get from your kind of home GPU. We're kind of almost there with Llama 3. The same level of visuals that you're getting from like Sora, for example, you will be able to get on your kind of home GPU. And then I think it's extremely hard to regulate your hardware in bits. So I think that the solution in the end is going to be kind of a wide education around what these things are kind of capable of. And actually, I think like democratizing a thing and them are widely accessible is an important step forward. You know, like give you like a personal example. For a long time, my father was like, sending a lot of these funny videos in a in a family WhatsApp group. And a lot of time I kind of wrote him, listen, Dad, it's not real. It's like manipulated imagery, manipulated videos. And my dad just like couldn't get it. He was like seeing a photo and, he believed what he saw, although it was very clear that it was manipulated. I think now the discourse around the AI reached like this boiling point, and even my dad is aware that he needs to take these things with more than a grain of salt. And I think that that's going to be a real solution. Because again, from a technological perspective, I really don't see what we can do at the moment in order to create like this ironclad system that will tell us if something was generated by AI or not. It is obviously an active area of research in academia. You'll find papers that are trying to create it. Maybe we're going to get there, but at the moment, we're not there yet.
I wish there was some kind of association or one of the big companies would start a move that actually obey to certain rules here, because I hear you very clearly and carefully, and actually it sounds like nobody will take responsibility at the end. Strong tools like yours and others, when eventually you'll be able to mimic very realistic images and put sound on it without knowing what is the source of it, might be a little bit dangerous. But again, I have to raise this. I have to talk about the responsibility here and the fears that many of us are having.
Sorry, again, to circle back on this point, it's almost what I'm trying is like to point a little bit on kind of current technological realities, right? Imagine that what you're seeing at the moment, like the models that are associated with the companies, are going to soon be associated with single individuals, right? So in some sense, we already kind of got to a point where, an example, like think about like Stability 1.5 or like SDXL, right? Like in 2022, 2023, when these things were trained, the budget back then was like a bit low for SD 1.5 was, I guess, a bit lower than $1 million, SDXL higher than that. So it was out of the reach of individuals. These days, you can, with kind of algorithmic advances in architecture, with our better understanding how to train the systems, if you want to train something like that, it's already like more than enough in order to create like a lot of deepfakes around at least static imagery. Like the price is around like $10,000. Okay, so maybe it's still not like a project that everyone can do. Like it still requires some kind of budget, but come on, it's like really, really low, right? So it's very hard for me to see how kind of mere regulations of the company at the space will be enough, right? I think as a society, we need to tackle this issue. I don't think it can, like, again, obviously you can regulate the companies, and I think this thing's kind of popping more and more, and companies will comply to it. And I think it's always going to be benefit the bigger companies more that just have, kind of enough budget to sustain the regulation, etc. But again, I don't think it will solve the problem that we're trying to solve, because the deepfakes, like their price is already at the level there, these models can be trained by a single individuals at home.
Zeev, back to LTX Studio. What is the thing that you personally most proud of when you see the whole studio?
Well, I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I'm kind of working on on the certain parts of the project as a single contributor. But if I were trying to be unbiased, like specifically now, like with the latest release, were like certain things that I think like super exciting. First of all, finally there is like collaboration, right? Like the whole idea of LTX Studio is that, again, you're like creating your idea, showing to people. Now you can work with multiple people on the same project. I think that's kind of very cool. Another problem that we're trying to solve is that if prompting is not enough for you, meaning it's kind of not accurate enough, you'll be able also to start kind of do like this rough scribbles where you kind of specify where the objects are going to be, right? So imagine that you want to have like a dragon in the sky and, you know, like the sun and some castle, etc. It's very hard to define in the prompt the relationship between all these objects, and with actually like with simple scribbles it can be enough. And especially it's super fun when you kind of working iteratively over it, meaning, you know, you created something cool, but then you're saying, okay, that's fine, but I want to add on top of it and on top of it. So that's going to be in place, and I think it's going to give like a ton of control for generating first frame. That's another very cool thing. And also, like in terms of control, another thing that I'm excited about is finally kind of a keyframing. Because at the moment, the way LTX kind of mostly work is that you can create the first frame, and then it created kind of a bunch of options for you how the video could look like that starts with this frame. But now you will be able also to specify the last frame, right? So let's say, you know, like you have a character in one shot that's on the right side of the screen and the left side of the screen. It's going to do like the whole kind of interpolation for you and going to also kind of give you kind of a bunch of options how in between it can look like, right? Because again, like if I'm moving my hand, it can be fast or slow, etc. So we're going to starting to get control over that. So I would say at the moment, the things that excited the most is the collaboration and giving more control over generation of the frame.
Which I think it's also important to say that's one of the things that differs you or the tool from other tools in the market, like Sora, for example, because Sora, of course, from Google was very much in the news. But what your company is doing, it's not a single thing, but it's a complete solution. And of course, it's the matter of control that you can have on different aspects of production at the end. One of the things which also occurred to me that you are able to export after manipulating, doing, and so on. You're able to export a bunch of clips quite fast. If you can give some figures on how do you do this? How do you achieve this?
We invested a lot of effort into a kind of optimizing the generation speed. There are like things that are called kind of distillation processes. We're kind of taking these big models and basically like taking a bunch of different computations that are happening and trying to kind of condense them into less steps. We also try to parallelize things as much as we can, meaning that when you're running something, it doesn't run on a single GPU, but the different parts are working with different GPUs, because it's like especially important. You're going to see there are like going to be like this new feature. Maybe I should like mentioned it before, that allows you to finally start expressing emotions. You will be able to have like a character and make sure that, you know, the video is any left you want, and you will able to kind of animate it. So for this thing, we kind of had to invest a lot of efforts into parallelization, and it's actually, by the way, important for both user experience and speed, and for kind of driving the costs down. Our big problem at the moment, and I think that's a big problem for a lot of AI companies, that this feature is like extremely expensive. They cost a lot of electricity, basically, because you're running like this fancy GPUs on the back end. So once you're making things more efficient with distillation or parallelization or other methods, you're both creating better user experience and you're saving a lot of money.
There's kind of I don't want to say tight integration, but you are allowing to export the video directly to Adobe Premiere or DaVinci Resolve and other leading editing platforms. What is the thought behind it, and how do you do this?
So at the moment, a lot of like the users that we have that we're like running the closed beta for a while now, they're just like their flow. They're using Gen AI in order to kind of create the assets, but then they still need some parts of their existing flow, right? They're interested in specific transitions. They're interested in audio editing. They still don't give them the product. So we kind of try to figure out what we can do in order to streamline this process. So for some people who are like doing only textual and visual, like without videos, we created like this concept of briefs, where at the output you're like getting a brief that's like this fancy presentation, and that's enough. Some people are already like pitching things with video and advanced capabilities of Premiere, After Effects, DaVinci. That's like the stuff they need. So Like it seems kind of no-brainer at the moment. We're not competing at the market of professional video editing tools, right? That's kind of not idea there. We don't offer yet all the capabilities of, like Premiere or DaVinci Results. So it seems just like the right thing to do, make sure that our users can do their flow end to end, right? Like why make their life harder?
And of course, as a business, you also have to make money. As I said, you are kind of opening the whole thing to the public now. So how are you gonna make the money?
So the question about like monetization is a tough one because, as I mentioned, AI systems at the moment they're like extremely hungry, and in order to cover the cost, sometimes you uh, need to charge like really high prices. I think a lot of companies in the space, including us, kind of assuming that over time we'll figure out a way to drive the cost down, right? Like make things more efficient, advances in hardware, etc. And so what we're trying to do at the moment is, first of all, make sure that there is like a tier where AI enthusiasts in the community can at least try the system. So that's like free, and we just like sponsor the usage there, right? And then the tiers are actually just like built around the amount of time you're like spending on the GPUs, right? Because that's like the actual kind of costs of the system. And I think with time it will evolve, right? I can really see a future where at some point your home GPU is going to be strong enough to run most of the models, right? Then I think we'll kind of change the pricing. But at the moment, it's mostly kind of driven by the cost of GPU. So every tier you'll see exactly how many GPU hours you're getting.
Zeev, before I say thank you and goodbye, is there anything that I forgot to ask or anything that you want to highlight regarding the new LTX Studio?
One like really amazing feature that I forgot to talk about that like really surprised me is like this ability to transfer kind of emotions from you like to digital avatar. Like when we started to work on LTX Studio, my assumption was that actually emotions are going to come last. That's going to be like the most challenging thing to do. I kind of assumed, yeah, that the AI is going to quickly get to a point where we'll able to do a lot of these like cool science fiction kind of shots that we're doing like with classical 3D, but like human emotions are going to stay out of it. And there was like a surprising breakthrough in academia in last quarter that allows you to kind of pretty efficiently, meaning you don't need like to wait a ton of time to map your facial expression to digital avatars. So we really kind of try to push it forward, meaning that first of all, make sure that there is no limitation there on the length of the video. You'll see that it's not limited like to 5 or 10 seconds like you typically see. It's like really can be, I don't know, like minute or 2 minutes of the dialogue, and the dialogue can be very expressive. So I think, and like I really hope that we're finally going to start to see kind of new things in the world of AI video, because at the moment a lot of the results they kind of look like like this very like trailers with a very brisk pace. You're like seeing like this short shot, etc., and it kind of gets old quickly, at least for someone who is like looking at these things all day long. So like I really, really hope that after this feature, we're gonna start seeing things that are a little bit, more nuanced and interesting.
Is it a proprietary technology that you're talking about, or this is something that you actually
No,
borrowed?
it's like the idea came from the academia. We invested a lot of effort how to make sure that it runs in parallel. So you can kind of render long clips kind of without waiting a lot. And we're also working in order to make sure that it's real time, meaning that you were able to open the camera of, let's say, your MacBook Pro, and then kind of start talking and playing and seeing how your digital avatar reacts to it.
A year from now, shall we try to repeat this interview, but this time it will be my avatar talking to your avatar?
No, listen, like that starts to seem more and more plausible.
Good. Zeev, thank you very much. Thank you for taking the
Thank
time
you.
to answer my questions.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, thank you very much, and please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.